Today on the Kickstart podcast, I'm sitting down with 3 college sophomores from some of the best colleges out there to figure out what was their high school experience like and what's their college experience like. We're going to figure out what is it that makes them tick, what is it that professors are like in college, and most importantly, what's their favorite ice cream flavor. You're tuning in to the Kickstart podcast because this is what you need to motivate you to get wherever it is that you're trying to go in life. So with that, this is Kickstart. Let's go. I think probably one of my biggest gripes about high school, you have some of the best teachers in the world, but you also get some of the worst of them, I guess. How are teachers in college? And are your teachers, are your classes mainly taught by proper teachers who've done degrees or like TAs and adjuncts? One?
Yeah, I can go first. I think it was just really, I think it's like very subjective because I've noticed that in some subjects, the professors are better and then others they're worse. So I think some professors are better at teaching like courses that are related to like language and writing, and there are some professors that are a little worse at teaching like quantitative classes. I think it really varies depending on like I guess who you take it with and when you take it with. I think I've definitely seen that like some of my classes are taught by professors like in terms of lecture when everyone's there, and then some classes are broken down into like the TAs are kind of just reviewing what the professor already said. And so it can be both. Sometimes it's only the professor, sometimes it might only be the TAs. I guess it varies.
I could add on to that. Definitely from my experience, I would say every professor knows the content they are teaching, but that doesn't specifically mean they are good at teaching, which can run into problems. That's why you should always show up to the discussion sections where the TAs explain, because some profs are really bad at teaching, honestly.
And my perspective on that is coming from a large public research university, most of the faculty, the head lecturers or the professors themselves are more focused on their research. So definitely teaching is their second priority. So to compensate for that, we have a large body of course staff that are usually students who have taken the course before and have excelled in that. And then they become like TAs or readers or graders. And there's also graduate students who help out. And usually that like corpus of people are very well qualified and they do a great job in helping you. So as Jordan said, definitely go to your discussion sections, make good friends with your GSIs, go to office hours. But at least at Berkeley, the professors themselves, at least for larger courses, are not directly accessible themselves. So the course staff will be your best friend.
And would you consider that like a strength of your college or a weakness? What would you say for that?
I would say that that's a strength of my college because that really promotes an active environment of learning because the course staff are excellent. The students who have taken the course before, because there's a pipeline from taking the class into becoming part of the course staff. People are really good at what they do and they're really good at teaching and relating to students. So I really appreciate having like a lot of people to look up to as like student mentors. And that's in one way you get a lot of different perspectives when you're learning about a complicated subject.
And this one's for all of you. What strengths would you say your college has like in general?
I can go first. I think, I guess, because for me specifically, I'm in the School of Business, and it attracts a lot of like really distinguished and innovative collaborators and thinkers. And so I think that one of the benefits that's really great about going to like Wharton is that you get to see people who invented new ways of marketing, new ways of trying to sell a brand, new ways of connecting with customers, or new ways of learning. And I think it's really cool to just see it firsthand, kind of how they got from one place to the other. And I think that's something that is a great strength at Penn, is that a lot of these people are very well experienced in these areas, and they're trying to kind of share their learning through classes or through courses or office hours or even fireside chats as well.
All right.
Yeah,
Sean?
for me personally, my school. Oh, sorry.
Continue, please.
Oh, okay. My school personally, we don't really have big lectures, so that's definitely a strength. You can definitely go talk to the professor. The maximum amount of students in one of my classes was 40, which is a little bit more than a typical high school class. So that definitely helps out. The social the social aspect at USC is really good. Everyone's friendly. There's always parties and stuff going on. Great places to make connections. And the alumni association is really big as well. Like Juan said, there's always people you meet who are like really successful and can help you out.
Yeah, great points. And for me, what I like about Berkeley is that the idea of space makes a lot of difference in your experience because Berkeley is a smaller campus. All of the different sub colleges are very close together. And oftentimes you'll find that classes in your department are not necessarily exactly where the class would be according to where the college would be. So you get a chance to meet a lot of different people from many different majors. Speaking of which, a lot of people do double major at Berkeley. So they do different quantitative disciplines, or sometimes they'll do like more humanities disciplines as well as quantitative disciplines. So many different interdisciplinary activities going on all the time. And research is extraordinary amount of research goes on. Grad students, PhDs, they're always looking for people to help out. So if you email anyone, you'll at least get some sort of response. That's something that's really cool. And definitely the location being part of the Bay Area, you get access to a lot of startups, a lot of unique things that are going on. And obviously the natural beauty of the Bay Area is something that's really nice to me. So those are a couple things that I like about Berkeley.
All right. I want to backtrack to something you said, Jordan, about parties. What's the party scene like on campus?
Um, let's say that at USC specifically, if you get caught up in it, you could be partying like every day. Like it's really crazy at big schools, especially USC. There's Greek life is a big thing here. Like 30% of the school is in Greek life. And specifically about like I would say 3/4 of the school parties at least 3-4 times a day. I mean not a day, sorry, a week.
Had me concerned there for a moment. All right. So, like, going on the flip side of that, how much time do you guys spend studying every day, or do you even study every day?
I could go first with that.
Okay.
All right. I study about 3-4 hours a day, or because my classes, the coursework is pretty long, and sometimes I don't get what's happening in the lecture. I have to go back to the textbooks and self-learn.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about you guys?
I think going off of that, I think similarly, Penn is very, very into the Greek life. I think it's something that is like especially prevalent at Penn. I just always see a lot of things going on every other day. And sometimes it's even like it might be overwhelming, I'd say, which could be a negative, like kind of like a con, which is it just happens so often. Or there's so many things going on, so many parties or so many events that it can be kind of overwhelming for freshmen. But I think as you go along, you kind of start to have like a preference for things that you want to go to, things that you don't want to go to. And I think in terms of studying, I think it really depends on kind of like your major, and then what courses you're taking. Some courses, while they are the same content, they are taught very differently, and they might require more studying than another course. So I think it really depends. I think for me, I generally study about like 2 to 3 hours. Um, like I'd say probably like 5 out of the 7 days. I don't think I study every day. I think there's definitely a lot of room for me to just kind of relax and get to explore clubs and other things like that.
All right, and Sushant?
Yeah. So definitely studying patterns depend a lot. For example, you'll see some people who are smart enough that they just don't go to lecture and then they just study in the meantime. It very much, you'll find your best way of learning after a couple of weeks in your classes, but it's not a fixed schedule every day. I typically study for maybe 3 to 4 hours per day. But what I like is that there are many, many different types of study spaces on campus. There's something like 26 libraries across different departments at Berkeley. So people are always there. There's people are very supportive. They work together. So study groups, going to homework parties, which are basically sections devoted to working with your peers on assignments. Those are really helpful in getting to know your peers. And with respect to events and programming, I just want to touch that Greek life is definitely not as big in Berkeley, in the sense that you don't feel like it's pervasive. At the same time, it's huge at Berkeley. So you can definitely become part of that as you want, but there's no peer pressure. Um, there's it's very open. At the same time, there's also hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different clubs on campus in whatever niche interest that you have. So they always have events. But yeah, that's some of my insights.
All right, and you mentioned something about like I think it was a study group type thing. What kind of resources? You said in your first couple of weeks you figure out your best study techniques. What kind of resources did you find those first couple of weeks on campus that were like helped to make your life easier?
Yeah. So I started university during the pandemic. At that time, it felt like an extension of high school in the sense that you wake up from bed, you go to class, you do your homework. And when it comes to lower division classes, it feels like very easy to do that. But then when you start taking upper division classes, like the more advanced courses, you need a lot more support and intuition. And the best way I've learned to get mastery at the material is to go to office hours. So find out all of the sections of office hours that your courses have and start talking with different TAs. Go there, ask all your questions. They're more than helpful. They're only there to help you. And things like homework parties, where every single class they have times during the week where peers can just get together and they'll have course staff there to answer your questions. Those things have been really helpful. Also, huge library system, as I said, that have very different atmospheres. Some of them are dead quiet, some of them are collaborative. All of them have a different scenery environment to it. So you could find what works for you. The campus is very diverse. And yeah, those are some things that I found really helped me a lot.
Yeah. Right. Juan, Jordan, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I definitely agree. I think also just kind of like depending on what professor you have and I guess the size of the class, some professors are more than willing to kind of put in a little extra work because while some are doing research, some of them are also just professors who love to teach. And so there's also that like additional resource besides office hours, besides like teaching assistants, libraries, things like that. And there are also like school dedicated organizations. I know at Penn, there's a bunch of different ones dedicated to helping you learn study habits or helping you understand the best way that you learn, or even helping you just kind of keep yourself accountable with studying. It's like, oh, hey, just checking in to see if you've done this work. We want to make sure that you're actually staying on track academically, things like that. So I definitely think that there are several resources beyond the ones that we even know.
Yeah.
Yeah, adding on to what Juan said, at USC, we definitely have like writing centers and math centers where you could just show up and they help you specifically on math and writing. I definitely use the writing center because I'm not very strong at essays myself as an engineer, which I struggled with my first semester, and that really helped me a lot.
All right. So speaking of organizations and student organizations like that, what kind of clubs or other student organizations are popular on campus?
I can kind of go ahead and start. I think it definitely varies depending on what you're studying, what school. I know like for engineers, there's a lot of clubs that like will design projects, and so it's very popular to kind of take on kind of like the experience of designing a rocket or designing a car. And I think in terms of there's like people who want to study business, right? It's very popular to join like a business fraternity, where you get to connect with people with similar interests, people who want to present cases, people who want to understand business. And I think just for all majors, there's different clubs depending on like different interests. I guess I don't know if there's one single popular club because it really, really varies on depending on the people you hang out with, depending on where you kind of frequent. But I definitely think there's a lot of different things that are popular and that'll have a lot of people attending.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could add on to that. I'm currently involved in a design team, like Juan said. We're designing a solar car, like a car that runs on solar panels, which it's definitely a difficult task to do. And there's definitely much other design teams for engineering or or like math related, computer science related. And there are definitely other business fraternities kind of stuff. There's also social clubs like, for example, I have a lot of friends in the Latino Student Union, Muslim Student Union. Also, there's just sports clubs, like not NCAA level, but they just compete with other schools. Like there's a USC men's and women's soccer club, for example.
What about on UC Berkeley?
Yeah. So so many different clubs on campus. But again, based on your discipline, there are many clubs devoted to that are either associated with the department of the major that you're studying in, or they just have been known to work in those areas. For example, I'm part of a applied statistics club where we do projects related to statistical consulting, or for example, education, where we help create educational resources to mentor younger students in the club to take harder classes. And we have like office hours and we have an alumni network. So I recommend trying to join one academic related club that relates to your discipline. And as Jordan said, there are as many social clubs as there are as quote unquote academic clubs. And oftentimes you'll find an intersection of both. But for example, at Berkeley, there's an interesting club called Chaos, which is
Chaos.
Cal Hiking and Outdoor Society.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's much more tame than the name suggests. But
Yeah.
it's the oldest hiking platform in the Bay Area. It's been around for 160 years, which is wild. So lots of people there. They have a mailing list. They post about trips, so you could join them, and that's been really fun. But honestly, there's in whatever range of interest that you have, you'll find a club there, even for interests that you don't know you have. So I recommend that when you join university, they'll have some club fairs at the beginning, probably 3 to 4 club fairs, and there you could meet with different organizations that tell you what they do, and you could find your pathway.
You know, like clubs, a huge aspect of them that I know of is socialization. And one of the biggest ways, like when you come onto campus, roommates and the people you share a dorm with, I've heard that they're some of the best connections you can make. What's your opinion on that, dorm life and things like that? Start with Sushant.
Sure. So as I said, I was online during my freshman year.
Mhm.
So that was probably not the best. It didn't enable socializing a lot because I didn't really get to understand the scale of how large university actually is and types of things that were going on beyond my immediate vicinity. So I actually joined the stats club that I was talking about in my freshman year. And although it was online, I was able to meet hundreds of people who I would not have met otherwise. And I got a sense of how life was like for juniors and upperclassmen who were there and experienced university in person. So that was something that really helped me out. But in terms of dorm life, I never lived in a dorm myself. However, I live in what's called a cooperative house, which is somewhere in the middle of a dormitory and an apartment. And the idea is you have many people who work together and jointly own a house. And that's a good way of meeting people outside of just your major or outside of your interests. But if you do live in a dorm, like meeting your floor mates, quote unquote, keeping your door open, I've heard that those are really good ways of connecting. And honestly, as long as you're open minded, you'll find many people, and you'll make a lot of good friends.
All right. Juan, Jordan.
I think for me it was very interesting because I started to go to Penn after kind of COVID had like kind of winded down a little bit. So I did get to experience like dorm life and just living in different types of dorms. My first year, I actually lived in like a single, so I had my own room. I didn't really have to share with anybody, but I definitely had like your RAs definitely make your residential advisors, which are usually older students or grad students. They can make or break a lot of like your experience because some of them will throw events for you to meet your hallmates, right? Or some of them will encourage you guys to kind of go to dinner together or do things like that. So it's definitely one way of connecting. But I think also just in general, I've met people outside of kind of my dorm and connected with them, and then became roommates with them later on. So there's just like several different ways to really connect with people. And so even if you do end up living in a dorm or you don't live in a dorm, I would say that there's still plenty of opportunities. Um, like we said before, joining clubs or even doing like collaborative housing, there's several opportunities, even if it doesn't happen in your first semester or even your first year. I think that it's something that can be very fun. And I think just getting to know more people through common opportunities is very fun as well.
All right.
Yeah, I could definitely add on to that. I'm actually living indoor right now. I don't know if you can see. I'm living in a lofted room. I lived in a dorm also last year, like Juan, and definitely a lot of the people I hung out with the first couple months definitely came from my floor, from my building. Definitely go out. I would definitely say if you have the option to move in earlier because most people are definitely going door to door, saying what's up or something like that. Those first few days. After that, they all like accommodated to their own little friend groups, and if you like miss out on that, you might not meet people you could have met, which is definitely a downside. And also go to the events in the first week for sure. At my school, we had a bunch of events, and I met a lot of friends there. So
That's some really good advice. I know, like, I'll definitely be taking that when I head off to college.
yeah, and I saw a question in the chat like about senior starting applications. My advice personally would be to focus on your essays more than anything else, because that is mainly everything you've already done in your resume or throughout school is already in the past. The only thing you can change right now is how good your essay is, because that's what they're going to look at.
Yeah. All right, let's backtrack a bit here, way back to classes. Like, are your classes lecture-based or discussion-based?
I think it varies, but I think most, from what I've heard, it's both. So you might have a day where you go to a big lecture and it's like someone speaking to 200 students, and then you have a different day where you'll go. Like for Penn, what they do is they'll have Mondays you go to a big lecture and the professor is kind of giving an overview of like a certain idea, a certain topic, giving some insights. And then maybe Wednesday or Friday you'll be in a small group where it's like 10 to 20 kids with a teaching assistant or a PhD student, or sometimes even the professor themselves in smaller groups. And they kind of go over the week and like what you should have learned or what you should have taken away from the lessons. So I think it really like varies. There are some classes that are designed to be only small, and there are some classes that are only able to be lectures because everyone has to take it, like general education classes like math or some type of writing seminar, things like that.
Yeah. All right, Sean?
Sure. So classes at Berkeley, they depend a lot on your major of study. For example, if you're studying a technical or engineering major, the classes are generally quite large. And what that means is that they're designed to be scaled. So sometimes you'll have webcasted lectures, or you'll have very, very large auditoriums where lectures happen in person, but they're usually recorded afterwards. So based on how you prefer to study, you could either go to lecture in person or watch it recorded. But then you also have lots of discussion sections. And those discussion sections are led by people on course staff, as I mentioned, either undergraduates or graduate student instructors. And those discussion sections serve to reinforce a lot of the concepts that they go over in lecture, because that's supposed to be like a conceptual understanding of what's going on. And for other classes, sometimes they'll be a lot smaller. Sometimes you won't have a discussion section. You'll just have a smaller lecture. There will only be 20 people in your class. But in general, my advice for whatever class you take, try to connect with your graduate student instructor or your discussion section leader, and that'll be the best way that you could stay afloat with the course content.
Yeah. So it seems like, from what I've heard from all three of you guys, that your RAs and the core staff from UC that all these like kind of adult and authority like figures, they're going to really make or break your college experience, and they're going to also make an effort to reach out. It's like, that's what I got from Juan, at least. But in high school, Your teachers don't generally make as much of an effort to reach out, especially when it comes to the most dreaded time of all, asking for a letter of recommendation. How did your experience go? And like, how do you ask for a letter of recommendation in a good way?
I can start with that. So
Cool.
I would say that if you're talking about getting a letter of recommendation as a high schooler, my what I would suggest is don't try to pander to a teacher. So don't make appearances close to when you need the letter. Just try to. For me, I really like my math teacher, so I used to often go at lunchtime sometimes to just talk with him. And it wasn't even about math. It was just the dumbest things. Like he would just tell me like some stories about his life or whatever. Talk about books or movies. And it's those types of little connections that really help you make a relationship with a teacher or anyone who's important in life, really. Just don't treat them exactly like a teacher. Just confide in them or ask them about their opinions or make an extra effort to go out of your way to connect with people. Um, and that's the best way to get a letter of recommendation. And also, don't make conclusions too easily. I would say anyone who you're interested in, just ask them politely if they wouldn't mind recommending you. And then if they do, take time to have a conversation with them and get a relationship with them.
And you do this all high school, talking to your teachers and such?
Honestly, no. Honestly, my first 2 years of high school, I was a lot more timid because I went to a quite large high school, and sometimes it felt a bit scary to like talk to the teachers directly outside of class. Is that as a student in high school or college, is that you have this type of diplomatic immunity where you could talk to anyone. You could talk to anyone older than you. It doesn't even matter if they go to your school. You could just email someone who works at a startup or something. You could like email a PhD student or a world-renowned professor, and you have nothing to lose. You have no face to lose. So just be open, be very candid in what you want. Just have good conversations with people. And above all, if you do well in the class, then like if you pay attention to what you're learning, then you're that much more likely to get a recommendation.
Well said, and that's some really good diplomatic. All right. Juan, Jordan, any other advice or?
I think just to kind of echo that, I think that it is really important to kind of foster that relationship before you ask for a recommendation. I think it's also equally important to just like we said before, it's like never to discount any class, even if you didn't do your best in like let's say AP history or AP literature, right? If you showed up, if you tried to connect with your teacher, I think that's kind of what really matters here. So even if you want to get a letter of recommendation from a teacher, but you didn't do so well in their class, I think it'll matter more that you tried or that you tried to show up. And just in general, I think it always matters to just be genuine, genuine about your intentions, genuine about what you really want to, do moving forward. Because I feel like a lot of people really they want to give people opportunities and they want to give it to people who are, they're kind, they're genuine, and they want to put their best foot forward. So I definitely keep that in mind for sure because I think that's really what matters to just being a genuine person and making a genuine connection.
Yeah, I can add on to that. Definitely hopping on both what you guys said. You can take this like in life in general, just like be kind to other people. Don't be scared to walk up to someone and just introduce yourself because at the end of the day, like Sushant said, you got nothing to lose. And if you get something out of it, you get like a friend or someone who can recommend you, someone who can help you out in hard times, or just someone to talk to, which really goes a long way.
All right. Now, Jordan, I'm gonna be honest. USC is one of my dream schools to go to. So, like, I really want to get this from you. What are like so essays? We all know they're a really key thing, and letters of recommendation. We know they're. We all know that it's extremely important to get those for your application and get into a college. Like, because all you guys are at amazing schools: UPenn, UC Berkeley, USC. They're like amazing schools. So, what do you guys think brought you to this point? Like, got your application, got the admissions officers to say, you know what? I want to let them in. I want to have them at our school.
Definitely for me, I had an interest. So I'm an electrical engineer, and over high school, I just coded stuff for fun because I was bored, or I just worked on my computer or stuff like that. And definitely, I'm not saying you should lie, but definitely they don't. The people who are reading your essay at the admissions office do not know who you are, so you're able to twist it a bit. This is in life in general. You're able to twist. You can twist the truth a bit to go towards your favor, exaggerate some stuff. Don't be scared to pat yourself on the back on stuff you have done over college in your essays. Definitely just make it sound like it was a hardship to get through it and it was such a great achievement to on what you were writing on. For example, my engineering essay was I made a Discord bot, which is pretty easy and from my point of view, but most likely the admissions officer doesn't know what Discord is. So I made Discord sound more formal than it really is, and I made creating the bot sound harder than it is. But in reality, it really wasn't. It just you got to know how to use your words.
Okay, yeah.
I think I definitely agree with that. I think one of the most important things that you can do when applying for colleges, especially colleges that are competitive, is you want to be able to tell your story in a way that really, really suits you. And it tells them who you are, but also shows them that you've kind of gone through this journey of like whether it was hardship or personal evaluation, things like that. And like Jordan said, you want to be really good with your words and you want to show them that you're not afraid to take on new opportunities as well because as you might imagine going to a university, a private university or a giant public university or a university that's on another coast is a huge opportunity and it's very different, and I think it's very important to let them know that you're ready for these types of challenges, right? Especially if it's a school that's really competitive. We know that UC Berkeley isn't an easy school, and neither is Penn, and neither is USC, and neither is all the other schools. And so you want to be able to kind of communicate that you're ready for these challenges and that in high school you were someone who consistently tried to get out of their comfort zone. So I think that's going to be a really big key as well.
Yeah, okay. That's you guys, that's really well said. Um, you mentioned electrical engineering, Jordan, and that you did throughout high school. This is like to broaden out a bit from that. It seems like you like worked through high school and are still doing what you were doing in high school, right? Like the classes you took, the kind of things you did. It seems like they align to your major, but like what about like other APs? Did you guys take APs and how do they align to your major? I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I could go off of that. Early on in my high school career, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to get into tech. So I specifically took APs that would cater towards that. I took all STEM AP classes, which definitely helped me out in having high scores in APs definitely do help you out in getting into colleges, which definitely helped me out. I studied, well, this is an advice. When the couple weeks before you take a AP class, AP test, sorry, study as much as you can, watch any videos. Videos were very helpful. This allowed me to get a really high scores on my physics and calculus at AP classes. JS said, elaborate what you can on STEM APs. So STEM APs are like math, physics, computer science. I took computer science A, physics 1, and calculus for STEM APs, and also biology. So that would be STEM, anything science or math related.
I can speak about that.
Perfect.
So my experience with APs is that actually let me preface this by saying that none of us I think can really know what made us qualified to get into a college or not. And I think it's good that we kind of have that black box because if everyone kind of thought that they knew a formula for doing everything, then our lives wouldn't be as interesting and we wouldn't do things that we wouldn't have done otherwise. So in my experience, I took about 9 AP classes. Although I knew vaguely that I wanted to do something technical in the future, I didn't have a solid idea of that in mind until honestly about 12th grade when I was applying. but I did classes in pretty much every area of study. I did uh, AP biology and chemistry, but I also did AP language and literature. I did AP French. I did AP psychology. I did AP statistics, AP economics. I did a lot of these things in a lot of different areas. And uh, even if in practice I'm not studying those things directly in college, I feel like those new perspectives on thinking about problems really helped me, or being able to research issues in more well-defined ways. That skill really helped me in college now, and that helped me become a better writer. And some of the more tangible benefits are that sometimes if you do AP classes and you get above a threshold score, like above 3 or 4 maybe, you're usually able to pass out a lot of introductory college classes. So for example, I was able to skip 2 semesters of reading and writing classes because I got a score on my AP literature exam. So doing things like that can help you in a lot of ways. It give you a lot more class spots to take when you're in college to do things that you're interested in. And honestly, maybe this is a somewhat based opinion, but the people who take some AP classes are kind of a self-selecting population sometimes, in generally a positive way. Like you want to be. I think one thing that I liked about high school was that there was kind of like an even sort of peer pressure, in the sense that a lot of people wanted to do well in their classes. And so people kind of worked together. Um, they liked learning about the material, albeit it wasn't as complex as it is in college. But in college, what really matters is who you surround yourself with. And you want to surround yourself with people who are also hardworking and who like prioritize success in what they do, because that motivates you through your hard times. Like if you're struggling with something, like the hard work of the people around you will motivate you a lot. So to get into that habit, I recommend taking challenging courses, do things that you feel like you aren't qualified in doing, and having experiences that you wouldn't do otherwise. So I think overall, um, doing AP classes in many different disciplines was probably helped me significantly with the college application process.
What about you, Juan?
I think for me, I kind of had like a different experience. I came from a really I came from a public high school that wasn't necessarily the best, like it wasn't funded that well, and so we didn't really have a lot of access to many AP courses. And so I just kind of took whatever was available to me. But I think that kind of goes back to an earlier point of just kind of taking on opportunities if they're presented to you, even if you don't know if you'll necessarily succeed or fail in these opportunities. I think what matters is that you kind of took them on. I think for me, I just kind of tried to take whatever AP class that I could, that was like available or that it was being taught at my school. And I think beyond that, I think for me, I wasn't really surrounded by a lot of people who did kind of want to learn at the time. I didn't really become surrounded by that until I was in college. But I think it very well is important to really surround yourself with people who want to succeed, but also want you to succeed. Because they are definitely going to be kind of like your cohort that kind of helps you propel yourself forward and propel themselves forward as well. So I think it's definitely really interesting to just kind of see the different experiences, things like that.
Yeah, I get that. Since all of you are like in different places now and you come from different places too, you all probably have some different study techniques. What could you guys name some?
I could go first. Definitely one of my mentors in high school, he recommended me the Pomodoro technique. It's basically you work hard a short amount of time, like in short bursts, and then you rest for a little bit. Sorry about that. So it would be like high interval training, if you ever heard of that. It's something athletes do. They would sprint for a really long time, or no, sorry, a really short time, like 100%, 10 seconds, let's say, and they would rest for 30 seconds. It's basically the same thing. You would go study as hard as you can, 10, 20 minutes, another 10, 15 minutes, you would relax. That helps keep your brain fresh so you don't get fried during overload of just studying for 6 constant hours. And something else that definitely helps is listening to like classical or jazz music. It really calms your brain down.
Interesting. The hit technique for studying. I've never really thought of that. That's a good one. What about you, Juan or Sean?
I think for me, one of the things that I like to do is I like to take notes, because I think and more specifically, I took a psych course and we talked about how to efficiently study. And one of the things that they said is you want to be able to write down notes, like handwritten instead of typing them, because oftentimes what we do is we reword things in a manner which we understand better. And so it's often really important to not just copy everything the professor says, but to kind of internalize it and then kind of regurgitate it back onto your paper in a different form. And so that's one of the ways that I study is I just take notes. I try to really understand it, and sometimes I try to shorten it in a way that I can understand it even better. But I guess it really depends. But that's one of the ways that I like to study. It's really helpful, at the very least for me.
All right. And through those study techniques, like adding onto that, like I would say, what are some of the best ways? Let's say you're deep in semester one, and you realize, wait a second, my grades aren't where they want to be. And you check your grades, and they're 10-15% lower than what you wanted. What are some like last minute techniques to bring up your grades and GPA?
I think I can go first. One of the things that I would definitely suggest is one is to be paying attention to your grades throughout the semester. You definitely don't want to be checking it every once or like maybe at the middle of the semester at the end. You want to make sure that you know where you're at all times. And I think the reason is that you want to be able to you want to be able to actually ask for help. One of the ways that I realize is like, oh, if my like studying method isn't the most efficient for this particular class, then maybe I can ask for help from people who have taken this course, or ask from like the student centers, or ask people to kind of just try to give me an understanding from their perspective. And so that's one of the things that you can always do is asking for help never hurts. Sometimes we have a difficult time asking for help, but I promise you that it definitely serves you more than harms you.
Yeah,
All right.
definitely what Juan said is very important. Just don't try as hard as you can not to dig yourself in that hole, because getting out of that hole is much harder than succeeding on a straight line. But if you do happen to have bad grades or lower than you expected, first of all, don't stress yourself out. It's not the end of the world. Like just common saying, C's get degrees, but you should also try as hard as you can. Definitely, my suggestion, like Juan would say, is reach out, go to office hours. Don't be afraid to ask on like previous coursework from weeks ago. They'll definitely help you out, especially if you're struggling with it.
I'd like to add on to this because I think my perspective is a bit different, especially because we operate on a semester system instead of a quarter system. And some things I've noticed from that, maybe you guys can talk about this as well, is that in the quarter system, from my understanding, is it goes very fast. You have maybe a lecture for a week and a half, then you have a midterm. You have another lecture for 2 weeks, then you have another midterm. And then soon enough, you have your final exam. It's done. So the amount of content that they go through in one quarter is maybe not necessarily as like as rigorous as it would be in a semester, but it's a lot of volume. But if you go to a semester system school, they cram at least 2 quarters or more worth of content into one semester. But what that means is that you have a lot more focus on, you have to understand your fundamentals if you want to actually perform well in the middle of the semester. Because by that time you have to synthesize so much knowledge and you have to understand what's going on that there's like no escape. Like it's not going to be over. You still have a couple months worth left to do. So 2 pieces of advice that I think are really important are really, really focus on your fundamental classes, especially if you're in a technical major or anything really. For example, calculus, like don't take that lightly. Calculus and linear algebra, you have to be really, really proficient in those subjects in order to make your life easier as you take more and more complicated subjects. Basically, any of your basic classes, spend a lot of time and effort understanding that material, and that'll make your life a lot easier later on. And secondly, if you feel like you're struggling with conceptually understanding the material or absorbing everything, instead of just being sad that you don't understand the lecture directly, instead just look at your homework assignment blindly. Just try to use what you know previously to attempt to answer some of the problems that you're faced with. And that process will really kind of subconsciously guide you to the right direction in terms of what you need to learn. And like, you're not alone. If you're feeling behind, know that you're not alone. There's so many people who are behind like 10 lectures or 15 lectures after some point in time. But what really sets apart people who are behind in content and people who are behind in content and succeeding is that problem solving ability. So what you'll learn in college is that you should be able to apply past knowledge into new problems. And that just comes with practice. So really, always, whenever a new problem set comes out, look at the questions first. And again, this applies for any advanced course that you take, for anything that you study. Always try to solve the problems blindly, and then try to rewatch the lectures, go over the notes. As Juan said, write your own notes. That helps so much, putting it on paper, using your own pen and pencil. But those are some observations of mine.
Yeah, I get that. All right, let's change gears a bit here. Here's a rumor that's been going around that inside California, and you guys are all from in California, the UCs they're not really looking at people from California. They're like, let's go to Nevada, or like they're looking for more out of state prospects. Is that true?
I would personally say I don't think so. Just from because I personally knew a lot of people who had been applying to college this year and previous years, and they had been getting acceptance rates at similar to the ones that we were getting. However, I am not sure personally. I do go to school outside of California, but I have seen that a lot of Californian students get into UCs and also schools outside. But I guess it really depends. We are also a really large state. And so I guess comparing the population here to the number of people who get in somewhere else would probably be pretty uneven. But I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, I could definitely add my perspective. Um, the only schools I got into were private schools, or like really got into. The only UC I got into was Santa Cruz. I got waitlisted at UCLA, UC Berkeley, and all the other schools, but I got into Rice, Duke, and USC. So, which is definitely which is weird to me personally. Um, I would definitely say that UCs are just as competitive as private schools because of how big, like Juan said, how big California is. I don't think it's that they're not accepting California students, but rather that there's so many California students that the competition is so great.
Hmm.
Yeah, my 2 cents on this is that it's not a question that you should bother yourself with, because a lot of things are mysterious in how this works. But to avoid that, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't that's really important. That's what really hurt a lot of my friends in their college application process. Don't think that you're ever overqualified or underqualified for a school. Apply to schools that differ both regionally, both being public or private schools, being liberal arts schools. There's so many different categories, which maybe we'll speak on later. But yeah, don't concern yourself too much with if the UCs are becoming more or less acceptance. But anecdotally, I really don't think that much has changed. I think there's still the same proportion of people who are international students and out of state students as before. And as Juan said, like, a lot of the people I know from my school have gotten similar acceptance rates. So just do your best. Don't get hung up on things that you don't have a direct control over.
Yeah. So speaking of like the things you were saying, and with diversity in your college applications, couple questions based on that. One, for all of you, how many colleges did you guys apply to?
I can start talking about that. I think a good rule of thumb is you should apply to at least 20 colleges, with the assumption that in practice you probably won't apply to that many. But try to, yeah, apply to at least 20 colleges that you can kind of see yourself going to, and you can give yourself a justification. So definitely apply to more colleges than are just in your state. Uh, and really think about your priorities. For example, in my situation, I really wanted to stay in California. So that's why most of my colleges were in California, but I did apply to a variety of schools out of state as well, although I wasn't really considering it. So given that we don't have that much time left, I'll pass it on to you guys.
Yeah, I would just say real quick, I think 12 to 20 is a good range. And just like we said previously, apply to a different range of schools, liberal arts, in like in-state schools or out-of-state schools. Because personally for me, I wanted to kind of leave California, but I did want to have a good mixture of some California schools in case that I changed my mind, in case I didn't necessarily see myself going elsewhere. So make sure that you really think about your preferences and what you want to do.
Yeah, I agree with that. I could definitely back this up what Shasan said earlier about don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't just apply to all UCs because sometimes you might just get unlucky because all the UCs use the same application. So if you happen to make one hiccup there, then it would backfire. Definitely do apply to a broader range of colleges.
All right. What's your opinion on early action, early decision?
I would suggest.
Yes or no? Like,
Ooh,
sure. One. Yes or no?
Me personally, no.
No. Okay. Jordan, Sashant?
I would agree with that because financial aid is a big thing and it could change by college.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't apply early decision, but early action, any school that has an early action program, 100% do your best to apply by that deadline. I think statistically it's proven that it increases your chances of getting in just by applying early, all else equal. So definitely do that. Also, if you earlier deadlines are usually associated with consideration for scholarships that are either need based or merit based. So I think that helps a lot as well. So try to apply early whenever you can. But early decision, no, not for me.
All right. And to just quickly finish off, what's some advice you have for high schoolers, like freshmen starting off, sophomores getting through, or juniors and seniors getting ready to apply?
I think one big thing that I will emphasize that it isn't always covered is make sure that you're taking care of your mental health. If you aren't taking care of your mental health, then it does affect your performance academically, socially, and a bunch of other different things. If you're going to go to social clubs, if you're going to apply for, engineering clubs, whatever, anything that you do, make sure that you're, of body, mind, and sound. Because if your energy is off, it definitely affects outcome. And you just want to make sure that you're happy and that you're okay.
I think that's really, really important. And we're only touching the surface of this, but some things you could do is don't try to please others. For example, when you're getting advice on your essays, not everyone is created equal in whether they should have the privilege of looking at your essays or not. At the end of the day, they're your intellectual property, and you should use your discretion when you're picking people to review your essays. So I'd say, as a rule of thumb, have like 3 trusted people to review any of your written work. Otherwise, you'll get a lot of different opinions that might not help you in the long run.
I could definitely add on to that. Like Juan said, mental health is an important thing. An important aspect that causes bad mental health is being overwhelmed. So definitely manage your time well during high school. If you know you're going to be busy during application process, start it early. Definitely start your essays early. I started my essays for USC, like I worked on it for a whole month, but it may sound like a lot, but I only did 30 minutes a day, but that really fleshed it out to what it could be.
All right.
Also, one thing that I will say is that sometimes you lose your motivation in the process. You start comparing yourself with others, you go into a bad headspace. But remember that you're so close to having an awesome spring semester in high school. That's so much fun, I guarantee you. And to make the most of that time, really try to, for example, kind of start your applications in summer, apply early as much as possible. Don't wait until the last minute. Make sure you have a Thanksgiving break to yourself. Make sure you have your winter break to yourself. and you'll have so much fun in the latter parts of your senior year. That's what's really something you should look forward to.
All right. Thank you guys so much. This has been absolutely wonderful. Really appreciate you guys taking out this hour to help out our Bay Area community. It's been amazing. To those of you in the chat who have some questions that need to be answered, I'm gonna put my email in the chat and I can redirect them to them. If you guys want, you can put some form of communication in the chat too. All right. But yeah, so if you guys have any more questions, just drop them to my email and I'll do my best to get them to these guys.
Thank you so much for hosting.
Of course.
Yeah, it was awesome.
All right.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
All right, everyone.
Have a good one, guys. Good luck.
Good luck.
Nice meeting you all.